WWE Smackdown vs. Raw 2008 might be one of my favourite wrestling games of all time. I'm not joking, like, for as hated as this game seems to be amongst fans of, like, wrestling games, I think it's one of the better ones. So much so that I've played every version of Smackdown vs. Raw 2008, and I'm going to quickly go through them all in this video. We're going to separate this into three categories. First, we got the PS2, Wii, and PSP ones, which is like the last gen versions. Then there was the current / next gen versions with the 360 and the PS3 versions. Then you got the weird versions like the DS and the Java versions. Yes, they really did make this for Java phones back in the day. But which ones are good? Well, let's get into it. So the version that I used to play when I was younger was the PlayStation 2 version. And you got to understand, that's why I have such a fondness for this game, because if you're looking at this as a PlayStation 2 game, it's pretty bloody excellent. The graphics are pretty good for a PlayStation 2 wrestling game. The roster, of course, is pretty much identical on all of the games, except I think there is a few differences here and there. But otherwise it plays pretty much the same and has all the features that you'd expect from the next-gen version as well, which makes it an absolute classic game for me on the PlayStation 2. I sunk so many hours on this game. I mean, just look at all the different match types that you can do in this game. Like, there was lots of selection for the time. And one great other thing that I really enjoyed about the PlayStation 2 version that actually made it kind of hard when I first went back to play SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 is the control scheme feels so natural to me. The way that the dual analog sticks are used in order to have fluid, fast, arcadey style gameplay, like, I just took to it immediately. To the point where if I play SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, the controls feel like a weird halfway point to the SmackDown games and SmackDown vs. Raw 2008. I'd rather have one or the other, and so 2008 is a very nice, comfortable control scheme for me. So what's the Wii version like then, seeing as we're talking about controls? Terrible, I hate it. The Wii version controls awfully because it uses motion controls, and the Wiimote and nunchuck just don't feel right when playing a wrestling game. But at least if it was like fully button and analog stick controlled, I'd have something to work with. But when I have to wiggle the Wiimote, it just feels weird. And I don't feel like I'm in control of the wrestlers. Not only that, but they stripped down the amount of matches. It's got the least amount of matches out of any of the home console versions. It's got even less than the PSP version. That's right, we're leaving the Wii version in the dust. I hate it. But the PSP version, I'm actually really impressed by. Keeping in mind that this is on a tiny little handheld, it actually plays pretty nice. Like, it's no doubt the roughest looking one when it comes to actually replicating the main game, but like, given that it's on the PSP, I was just blown away by how well it manages to port everything over. I was expecting far bigger compromises than this. Like, this might be one of the better portable wrestling experiences that's ever come out. Like, it's crazy to think that the PSP can beat the Switch for portable wrestling gameplay, but there we are. So that's the first set. The PS2 version, lovely. It's like a good baseline version. That's probably like the standard to achieve for this here. Then you got the Wii version, which absolutely flops, just completely falls on its face. It's absolutely terrible. And then you've got the PSP version, which despite being a handheld, actually holds up pretty darn well. So then we move on to the next-gen versions, the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. And what do I think of them? Oh my god, they are so much better. Like, I constantly forget about how much nicer these versions look until I play the PS2 version and then switch to that HD versions with those better looking models, and I'm like, dang. Like it ends up looking how like my child brain imagined these games looking. Now I will say, on one little detraction to the PS3 version, I swear it's running more slowly. Like, here it is next to the 360 version. I don't know for certain, but every time I play it, it does feel slower, so I end up defaulting to the 360 version if I want that definitive SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 experience. Which, by the way, spoiler alert, the 360 version, ding 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 ding, that's the gold medal. That is the gold standard for what SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 should be. The PS3 is okay, but it's slow. But the fact that it feels slow kind of docks some points for me, but it's still a fairly solid version.
Now it's time for the weird ones. Now, I had to make some compromises with this one. I own the DS version, but unfortunately I don't have a capture card, so what you're seeing is emulated footage, and I promise you, I'm not as bad at the game as the footage will have you feel, but it's so weird trying to do touchscreen controls with a mouse. Either way, it's still a terrible way of playing Smackdown vs. Raw 2008, because the matches are just quick-time events. Like, why? Why would you ever want to do that? It's like, there's not much more to say, really. I mean, just look at it. It's terrible. Hate it. It's easily, like, the worst version of the game overall. Then you've got the mobile Java version, which unfortunately is just running way too quickly on this emulator. I tried to slow it down, but this is the best that I could get. And honestly, if I had this on my Nokia back in the day, I would have been fine with that. Like, yeah, it's bad. Let's not kid ourselves. It's bad. But the fact that it lets you create your own custom character with, like, some basic, like, PS1 Smackdown levels of editing could be worse, I guess. Like, this is a situation where I don't think they could have done much better given the format they were on, so I'll give them a pass, but it's still a pretty bad version. Right, so I spent all this time comparing the different versions, but what do I actually think of the game? Like I said, it's great. It's honestly one of my favourite wrestling games. Like, you've got Here Comes the Pain, you've got 2K19, you've got a whole host of others that I'll get to eventually, but the point is, this is up there as one of those games that I just really enjoy when it comes to WWE's wrestling games. The gameplay is fun, there's a 24/7 mode, which it can be a little bit laborious at times, but if I want to take the time to just spend a whole afternoon like on a longer mode, then some of the stuff that happens does tend to keep me somewhat amused. It's not the best though compared to other modes, like Here Comes the Pain's one is still the best like story mode I think I've ever played in a wrestling game personally. Creating a wrestler and creating a championship, while definitely limited nowadays, like you can't even have a beard that really sticks out from what I've found, and picking colours is a nightmare in Create a Wrestler. Having it all come together is still definitely fun, and with a little bit of legwork, you can get most of the wrestlers that you'd like come together. So, while definitely not near as good as what is around nowadays, I can still work with it and have a decent enough time. And as a kid, I loved creating custom championships. It was just a load of fun being able to just create your own special title. Also, before we end the review, a little life hack. If you want to get a bunch of cash right out of the gate in Smackdown vs. Raw 2008, start up 24/7 mode, go right the way down to WrestleMania on the calendar, and then just let it simulate from there. You will rack up money like it's nobody's business. With that, you can buy all the stuff you need in the WWE shop, because one thing that you definitely need to do if you're going to make a custom wrestler is buy like the special things that bump the stats up. Because for some reason the game lets you only do it that way, and I gotta say, that is one thing that I hate in this game. Why would you do that and take away the customization? It was so stupid. I'm glad that they, eventually changed their minds and brought back being able to just customize the stats manually. But yeah, overall, while maybe it'll be a lower entry in my top favorite wrestling games of all time, it's still a game that I have such a soft spot for, so much nostalgia for, and one that I will still load up every so often. I still prefer other games like Here Comes the Pain and whatnot, but Smackdown vs. Raw 2008 tends to get an unfair rep in my opinion, as I think it's an underrated wrestling classic. If you can find the PS2, Xbox 360, PS3 or PSP version, I'd recommend trying it out.